Hello everyone, TLOU Strategist here, back with another interesting and different video from my usual fare. So in this one, I took the idea of what's in a name, and what I'm going to literally do is sit down and chronologically go through all the characters, all the names of all the characters in The Last of Us, both part 1 and part 2. Everything we know right now, I'm just going to go through all of them. So I am not a biblical scholar. I don't speak Hebrew. I don't speak Old Germanic, Aramaic, none of those. Arabic, Farsi, no, I don't. But I do a decent amount of research, and I feel like I am able to discern certain things. Different characters' names will have very different and very several different spellings, and sometimes the meanings can vary quite wildly. I'm doing just my best to take what I think, my judgment of what the character might mean. It's just my take on it. It doesn't mean that it is the one true meaning. So if you have any thoughts or insights, please feel free to leave them below. But yeah, with that said, let's go ahead and get into this. So the first character we play as in The Last of Us is not Joel and not Ellie. It's Sarah. So Sarah's name is biblical in origin. It means lady or princess or noblewoman in Hebrew. And I think you'll find a lot of these names are either derived from Hebrew or Germanic origins. So Sarah in the Old Testament is the name of Abraham's wife, and she's largely considered to be the matriarch of the Jewish people. Another interesting thing about Sarah is her name was originally Sarai, S-A-R-A-I, but it was literally changed by God in the Old Testament to Sarah because that's what he preferred. So yeah, let's go ahead and go to the next one. The next character we meet is the character we play as for the vast majority of the game, Joel. His name is derived from the Hebrew name Yoel, which means Yahweh is God. It is a composition of two elements. Y-O, is a Hebrew element for Yahweh, and El, E-L, refers to God. Joel is one of the 12 minor prophets in the Old Testament, and he's also the author of the Book of Joel. So that Book of Joel is pretty darn interesting. You may want to take a look at the verses that is encapsulated in those, particularly 2:1 and onwards. It's basically this apocalyptic passage describing the locusts as not only being this relentless army, but also being an army of God. I think it's worth checking out. The third character we meet is Tommy, or Thomas. His name is biblical in origin. It is Greek form of the Aramaic name Teoma, which means twin. Thomas is also the name of an apostle in the New Testament. When he heard that Jesus had risen from the dead, he initially doubted the story, giving them name Doubting Thomas. And that is until Jesus had appeared before him, and once he examined his wounds for himself, he was convinced. I find that wording just very interesting, once he had examined the wounds for himself. I think it's a really, really interesting parallel, don't you think? The next character we meet is Tess, which may be short for Teresa. Teresa comes from an uncertain etymology, but is believed to be related to two Greek words, one meaning late summer and the other meaning to reap or harvest. I found this kind of fitting since Tess wound up meeting her demise in the summer chapter. The other thing that comes to mind is Mother Teresa, the Albanian missionary who worked with the poor in Calcutta. She had adopted her name from a French saint, Thérèse de Lisieux, who is the patron of missionaries. And for me, indeed, Tess became quite the missionary herself, right? She sacrificed everything for the goal of getting Ellie to the Fireflies. Next up is Robert. Robert's name is a Germanic name. It comes from the name Hrodeber, meaning bright fame. And I found this quite ironic. Bright fame indeed, right? Having died to his dirty dealings with the Fireflies. So yeah, that's Robert. Next, we have Marlene. So Marlene is a blend of Mary and Magdalene, two different names. And it is a nod to Mary Magdalene, one of Jesus's most important female disciples in the New Testament. So for me here, things get pretty darn interesting. Her name, Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, She was named that because she was from Magdala, a village on the Sea of Galilee. Magdala is a Hebrew word meaning tower. It is also an Aramaic word meaning elevated or great. She's always referred to as Mary Magdalene. It was definitely to differentiate her from like the Virgin Mary and other Marys in the books. But the one thing that I found particularly interesting about her is she was the first person whom Jesus appeared to. Just like in the game, Marlene, when we first meet Marlene, the first person that she's kind of with is Ellie. So make of that what you will, but I just found it kind of be like an interesting little parallel. So let's move on. So now we're at maybe the most important of characters, Ellie. I believe her name is short for Eleanor, which can mean God's light or light of God in Hebrew. El means God, just like in Joel's name, and O-R, means light in Hebrew as well. When I was looking at her name, it reminded me of Eleanor Dashwood from Jane Austen's novel Sense and Sensibility. Eleanor in this novel represented the sense of the title, as she was a strong female character possessing both excellent judgment and strength of understanding far beyond her years. Not only that, but in the novel, she was really the moral center of the book. She did what was necessary for the sake of the people that she loved. Also, I find that her name is very similar to Elena, which means shining light or the bright one. For me, these are super interesting connections, but we'll just leave it at that for now. Bill is absolutely one of my most favorite characters in the game. He really is. And I find his name to be quite fitting for his character as well. Bill is short for William, which is derived from the Germanic name Wilhelm. Wilhelm is composed of the elements will, W-I-L-L, which literally means will or desire, and helm, which means protection, just like with the word helmet. And to me, this is the ideal name of this character, as he literally exerts a fiery will of self-determination. And he also, unnecessarily, I might add, risks his life several times during the Billstown scenes to protect Joel and Ellie. So yeah, Bill the Protector, the self-determined protector. A great fit, I think. Next up is Bill's partner, Frank. I found it interesting that both Bill and Frank both had names that were Old Germanic in nature. Frank literally is an Old Germanic tribe called the Franks. Their name was derived from the type of spear that they used. Now, for me, I don't know if this is perhaps a phallic reference or what. Who knows? But yeah, Frank. Let's go ahead and move on. I think Henry is one of the most interesting characters in the game. His name comes from Old Germanic Heimrich, which means home ruler. And I found this to be super fitting of him. As when I think of Henry, I think of one who loves his brother so much. He dearly loves him. But he's also, in my opinion, far, far too controlling of him. Henry's constant management over his brother really, I felt like, stifled and diminishes Sam's confidence and ability to grow into a strong young adult capable of defending himself. And unfortunately, we all know how that turned out for them. Unless you haven't played The Last of Us yet. So you should go play it right now. Whoops. So now Henry's brother, Sam, or Samuel. Samuel, from the Hebrew name Shemuel, meaning God has heard. Samuel is a figure in the Hebrew Bible, the books of Samuel. In addition to being one of the last biblical judges, he was thought to be both a prophet and a seer, Sam the seer. I have some really interesting thoughts on a connection between Henry and Sam and a few others in the game, but I'm really going to save this for a later time. I think it is actually something really interesting when you look at these two characters. But yeah, we'll save that for later. Ish is another fascinating character. While partially inspired by Isherwood Williams, the protagonist in George R. Stewart's novel, Earth Abides, Ish could also be short for Ishmael. Ishmael is derived from the Hebrew Yishmael, God will hear. That's what it literally means, God will hear. The character also seems to have drawn some inspiration from a Herman Melville character, the narrator of the novel Moby Dick, Ishmael. In that book, he is the sole survivor of a whaling ship called Pequod. Look it up. The comparisons are very, very interesting indeed. Maria, derived from Biblical Greek and Hebrew, which could be Miriam, the meaning of Maria is not completely known. The etymology is a little bit sketchy, but some theories include that it might mean the sea of bitterness, rebelliousness, or even wish for child. There is also another possibility is that it is Egyptian in origin, derived from Mry, M-R-Y, which means beloved, or Mur, M-R, which means love. I find it interesting that along with Tess, Ellie finds herself under the temporary protection of both Marlene, which we associate with Mary Magdalene, and Maria. Anna. We are first learned of Ellie's mother's name of Anna from the Hunt chapter, where if you look into her backpack, we can see the letter from mom. Now, Anna may be a derivative of the Hebrew name Hannah, which is literally spelled Chanannah, and it means favor, grace. The name also appears briefly in the New Testament, and it belongs to a prophetess who recognized Jesus as the Messiah. So just think about that for a moment. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Anna at this time.
I'm trying to make you proud.
Next up is David. David most likely comes from the Hebrew name David, which is literally spelled D-A-W-I-D, which that was probably derived from Dod, D-O-D, meaning beloved or uncle or friend. There's a lot of different meanings that come from these. And as far as biblical terms go, David was the youngest of 8 sons of Jesse. And I find it, when I think of David, I am reminded of the Star of David, which is also called the Seal of Solomon and the Star of Zion. It contains several mathematic, or if you're into numerology, it can also be related to that, and Kabbalistic insights. And I think for this video, it's way too much to go into. So that's all I'm going to say about that today. But I find David to be a very interesting character indeed. Next is James. I believe James is derived from the Greek form of the Hebrew name Yaakov, or Jacob. The name means supplanter, or one who follows. And for me, follow he does in The Last of Us, right? Doing what David asks of him, despite disagreeing many of the times. Now on to the first character of The Last of Us Part 2, Emily. Emily is a feminine form of Emil, and possibly the Roman name Emilius, which is derived from the Latin word emulus, which means rival. Part of me feels that she may be a nod to Naughty Dog lead game designer Emilia Schatz, but I'm not so sure about that. Next up is Yara. The origin and etymology of Yara is quite uncertain. However, I did find that apparently in Arabic, Yara means little butterfly, which I found quite interesting. Clip her wings, indeed. Next up is Lev. Lev names, I found a couple of different meanings. The first one is Lev means heart in Hebrew, but it also means lion in Russian. I can see this name being very, very fitting for this character. Now on to the mystery woman. So many have speculated that her name is Anna, and it may very well be that that is the case. It doesn't necessarily mean that she is Ellie's mother, Anna, but it could be a different Anna altogether. But at this point, nothing has been confirmed. So if I had to give her a name, I would call her this. I would call her Mira. Mira is Hebrew for one who illuminates. So now we're on Dina, the one who really started this whole thing when I broke down her name in my A Discerning Glance video. So Dina has many different spellings. You can spell it D-I-N-A, D-I-N-A-H, D-E-E-N-A. There's many, many different spellings. And I kind of took a lot of these into consideration when I was kind of breaking down what her meaning of her name might be. Essentially, There are several different ones, but essentially her name means vindicated, judged, and avenged were the three that I found. And I chose to highlight avenged and vindicated. But I also feel compelled to give the judgment some time. So judgment is, or to be judged, or judged is another meaning of Dina. And for me, it really brought to mind the tarot card number 20, Judgment. It's number 20 of the Major Arcana. And this card really symbolizes change. It really looks into a time of resurrection and awakening. It's when old patterns, old ways of life come to an end and make way for new beginnings, new ways of life. And for me, this really goes back to what I said in the PSX 2017 video about what did The Last of Us, the big picture, what does it really mean? And yeah, so you can check out that video out again if you don't remember. But for me, this could be a pretty big little insight here. Jesse. Jesse is derived from the Hebrew name Yishai, which literally means gift. So for me, I think it'll be certainly interesting to discover just what sort of gift Jesse is, or what kind of gift Jesse has to offer. Ethan. Ethan is from the Hebrew name Eitan, meaning solid, enduring, or firm. Last but certainly not least is Seth. So Seth is a character that has not really officially been announced, but we have seen his name on IMDb voice actors. So Seth is Hebrew in origin and means placed or appointed. Also in the Old Testament, he is the third son of Adam and Eve. And for me, it's possible that Seth could be a placed or appointed member of the Seraphites, but that is yet to be seen. So that is it. That is all 24 characters that I have taken the time so far to sit down and kind of dissect a little bit. Thank you so much for your time and watching this. I know this is not the most insightful video and not the greatest video, but I think it's kind of fun to sit down and kind of break apart just these different characters' names, just solely their names, not different plot lines or storyline points, but just to look at their names and what they might be meaning. Yes. So thank you once again for your time. Please do comment or leave me any of your thoughts or suggestions you have below. One of the things that I really take pride in is reading each of your comments and getting back to you. I really try to respond to each and every one of you when possible. It has become increasingly more difficult as this channel has gotten bigger and more people have started commenting. But I sincerely try to get back, because this back and forth, the discussion and the community is something that I really do care about. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope each of you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Cheers.